If you grew up with a Nintendo 64, you knew what you were getting. Bright colors, happy music, a cartoon mascot grabbing coins. Ocarina of Time looked like more of the same until it started showing kids things they were way too young to see. Most people don't remember it as a horror game, but trust me, it got under your skin. Like the moment you stepped into that Great Deku Tree. When you step inside the Great Deku Tree for your first dungeon, something is already quite clear. Because you go from a bright, sunlit forest straight into the dark, hollowed-out womb of a dying god. The game just pulled you from the alive and living innocence of a forest to the inner world of a dying tree centuries old. The first feeling of eeriness comes from the audio design. The upbeat Kokiri forest theme disappears, replaced by the music inside the Great Deku Tree. Visually, the interior forces a sense of claustrophobia mixed with sudden drops. You walk on webbed flooring suspended over a huge pitch-black pit, and the walls are covered in climbable vines, but they are infested with goma larvae that drop from the ceiling unexpectedly. The architecture itself feels diseased because the dungeon is literally the infected insides of a guardian deity actively dying from Ganondorf's curse while you navigate his body. You are only getting used to the world and the airy area when you see a giant arachnid. It's more than a spider. A giant spider with its back having a skull. A giant spider with a name which is literally a portmanteau of skull and tarantula drops from the ceiling to give you a jump scare. The giant bone-white human skull on their back acts as a heavy shield. Your attacks just bounce off, and you are forced to stand there, waiting in close quarters for the spider to slowly spin around and expose its soft, fleshy underbelly before you can finally strike. If that wasn't scary enough, the gold Skulltulas add a mechanical body horror element to the environment. Long before you actually see one of these gold variants clinging to a wall, you hear it. The sound design uses a distinct, sharp scratching noise, like a dry, bony insect scraping rapidly against a hard surface. Since the camera angles in the Nintendo 64 version are often tight or fixed, the audio cues force you to look around frantically, creating pure paranoia. Remember listening to that clatter for the first time? But the horror behind the Gold Skulltula becomes clear when you understand its lore. The lore behind them makes the design pure nightmare fuel. It will make more sense when we reach Kakariko Village, and the gold tokens you collect from killing the wild gold Skulltulas are actually pieces of this curse. Every single one you kill in the world is tied to the literal physical mutation of human beings. Going through the perils of this dungeon now, it's time to fight the source of the horrors inside the Great Deku Tree. So you head towards the bottom of the tree. At the very bottom of the tree, you drop into a dark circular room. A thin blanket of fog rolls across the floor. A light scraping noise echoes in the dark. There is nothing in front of you. Then you look up at the ceiling. A singular glowing eyeball stares back down. Queen Goma. The singular eye staring you down in the darkness is perhaps one of the scariest things that Ocarina of Time could produce from the game. The battle opens with a real-time cutscene framed straight from Goma's perspective, looking directly down at Link. The camera snaps to the floor just as the door violently seals shut behind him. This gave players the chills, and the suspense was scary, wondering what it was that was looking at Link. The developers specifically pushed for real-time cutscenes over pre-rendered movies during development because they wanted the team to have the freedom to tweak camera angles on the fly to maximize tension. It worked. The game uses this exact suspense-building technique later on to mess with your head. Goma herself is completely grotesque. She's an armored parasite, but her combat loop leans heavily into biological horror. She retreats to the ceiling and props herself up on a long, fleshy tail. That tail visibly undulates as it pumps out fresh eggs. The eggs drop to the ground and physically pulse. They are textured to look exactly like small wet organs slathered in fluid. If you don't destroy them fast enough, they rupture, and Goma larvae burst out to swarm you. It is a lot to handle for the first boss of a game rated E for everyone, filled with so much body horror in the first dungeon. Looking for more horrors in the game will actually bring you to a place that is peaceful and harmless, at least on the surface. Kakariko Village. Sitting at the foot of Death Mountain, this town was originally founded by the enigmatic Sheikah tribe. For a long time, it was a closed-off sanctuary exclusively for the Sheikah, until Impa opened the gates to the rest of Hyrule. At first glance, Kakariko comes off as a humble, peaceful settlement. Aside from a few lazy carpenters, the residents are hard-working people just trying to get by. But as you progress through the story, the dark side of the village makes itself clearer. Heading into the southeast corner is a dull grey building known as the House of Sculptula. Stepping inside is incredibly unsettling. The room is bare, choked by thick cobwebs. You find ruined furniture, a dusty book bearing the Sheikah symbol, and bizarre portraits of spiders hanging on the walls. Then, a big Sculptula zips down from the ceiling. He begs for help instead of scaring you. This is the cursed rich man. According to the town's law, he and his 5 sons were the wealthiest family in Kakariko, but their endless, obsessive greed caught up to them. And as a result, they were punished by the spiders of the curse, physically mutated into the hideous arachnid monsters you see dangling in the center of the room. This was like a fable which taught us that greed leads to bad things. But Nintendo ended up creating a story with body horror, which was haunting to say the least. Leaving the House of Monsters and Greed brings you straight into a literal resting place of the dead. The graveyard sits directly to the east of Kakariko Village, and it is a deeply eerie place because the comforting music of the village cuts out entirely, replaced by a cold, heavy silence. This graveyard holds the bodies of generations of soldiers and loyalists who swore their lives to the royal family of Hyrule. The Sheikah tribe protects the grounds, keeping watch over the scary secrets buried under the dirt. If you visit during the day, you meet Dampe, the eccentric and unsettling gravekeeper who spends his days digging holes. His job is preparing the graves for the dead. It is the final resting ground for the dead, where they remain with their souls. The real terror comes when you start defiling the graves, as the game allows you to mess with the dead, and when you do that, it is not something to look forward to. If you grab a tombstone and pull it backward, it reveals a dark, open hole leading straight down into the earth, sometimes to discover treasure, but sometimes leading to an encounter with a ghost, a Poe. The lingering spirit of the dead floats up out of the freshly opened grave, cloaked in tattered rags with a glowing lantern gripped in its hand. Poes are undead spirits of concentrated hatred that are the restless remains of individuals who died with intense feelings of malice, vengeance, or deep regret. That bitterness keeps them in the world, lingering in graveyards and open fields with a deep resentment for the living. There is a deeply disturbing truth to these encounters, as you are a 10-year-old child entirely alone in the dark, physically digging up corpses and fighting the literal ghosts of the dead. The horrors of Zelda are becoming clear, and we deserve a like and subscribe because it goes a long way. But something strange and scary happens to these spirits in Link's adult timeline. Right at the main gate of the ruined castle town, inside a destroyed guardhouse, sits the Poe Collector. The Collector looks completely inhuman, floating midair, his legs dangling imply beneath a tattered purple cloak, and his face veiled in pure shadow, except for a single brilliant red eye gleaming from the center of his hood. He constantly clutches a large stick, swinging it in a slow hypnotic circle while letting out a high-pitched maniacal giggle that cuts through the dead silence of the room. In the child timeline, this guardhouse is bright, packed with pottery, and run by a cheerful Hyrulean soldier who genuinely loves his job. But 7 years later, the lively music is gone and the room is dim, draped in cobwebs and filled with ruined brickwork. The Poe Collector sits exactly where the proud guard used to stand. Something strange is going on here. What happened to that guard? You may think that the Poe Collector is a scary enemy like the Poes, but in reality, he is much worse than that. He is a black market merchant. Merchant of what, you may wonder? The answer is scary, because he deals in the creepiest thing ever: souls. Link can sell the defeated Poes in a bottle to the Poe collector for a little bit of cash. People really don't catch this as children, but as an adult, you see the horror. The normal Poes give you 10 rupees, but for the big Poes, they offer a huge 50 rupee bonus. The big Poes are a task in itself to gather. Link must ride Epona through the dark, crossing exact hidden triggers on the map to force 10 specific big Poes to spawn. You have to shoot them down with the fairy bow before they fade away, quickly dismount, and scoop the lingering spirit into an empty glass bottle. The implications here are incredibly dark. Link selling the souls for a measly 50 rupees and a point collector. This merchant of souls is thriving in the war-torn state of Hyrule because the collector's dialogue proves he thrives exclusively on the misery brought by Ganondorf's rule. He openly boasts about the destruction of Hyrule, stating, "With the world as it is, my business is booming." He even admits that peace is bad for his bottom line, claiming if the world were to become peaceful, I'd be out of a job. He represents a parasite that profits directly off the lingering trauma of the dead, showing just how grim the future timeline has become. But let's say you don't want to trade with the Poe Collector. What can you do with it? Well, you have another option. You can open up the bottle and literally drink it. Think about the physical reality of what is happening in this interaction. Drinking a Poe soul acts as a complete gamble. It is an unpredictable gamble with a toxic entity. The spirit is woven from pure malice and unresolved bitterness. Consuming it triggers a completely random effect. It might patch up a tiny fraction of your health, or it can violently sap your life force away, dropping Link's health bar instantly down to a fraction of a heart. The presentation adds to the discomfort because it is not special. Link just brings the jar to his mouth, tilts it back, and swallows a swirling violet face, a soul. Let's talk about another enemy which is much rather scarier than encountering the ghosts. We are going to look at Redeads. You encounter the first Redead as a child inside the Kakariko village graveyard. Playing Zelda's library on the Royal Stone crests triggers a lightning strike that shatters the tombstone, opening a hidden hole in the earth. Falling down this shaft drops you straight into the royal family's tomb. The atmosphere is dark and claustrophobic, with toxic green acid flooding the floor, damaging you on contact, and a low monastic chant plays in the background while swarms of bats strike from the shadows. The first room here has bones of dead creatures. Redeads sit perfectly still along the edges of the path, blending into the dark scenery. You only realize they're alive when you step too close. Every aspect of the Redead design targets players' helplessness. The creature wears a flat, featureless mask with hollow voids for eyes. Its starved body features an exposed ribcage and unnaturally long, gangly limbs. It moves with a slow, jerky limp, just like a dead zombie. The actual horror relies on a specific scream, which is a straight-up jump scare, honestly. Crossing their line of sight triggers a piercing, blood-curdling shriek. This scream completely paralyzes Link, locking your controls, and the game sits there, forcing you to watch the creature slowly shuffle towards you, while Link just stands there, whimpering in fear. Once it reaches you, the monster jumps onto your back. It wraps its long limbs around your body, and it bites your neck to drain your health. Watching a 10-year-old Link get bitten like that on the neck, it just feels like a scene straight out of Goosebumps. The surroundings explain why these specific monsters guard the grave. As Hyrule fought brutal civil wars before the event of the game, the Sheikah tribe ran underground torture chambers directly beneath Kakariko village, all to protect the crown. But more on that later. Because of that, the Redeads in the tomb appear to be the animated, vengeful corpses of the people executed or tortured by the kingdom. Later entries in the Zelda series reveal a different origin for these monsters. Trophy descriptions in Super Smash Bros. And lore from Triforce Heroes states that Redeads are actually magical dolls made of clay. Dark magic or pure hatred animation brings them to life. Whether they are reanimated corpses or cursed clay statues, their placement in Ocarina of Time tells a clear story. They represent the dark, rotting secrets buried right underneath Hyrule's peaceful surface. The Royal Tomb is just a preview of the horrors to come that you see in the child timeline. In the adult timeline, you discover the full horrific scale of Hyrule's hidden history. Behind the rows of graves, a heavy stone door leads into a world of pure nightmare. This is the Shadow Temple. It is the 7th major dungeon in the journey, which you can only enter after learning a song called The Nocturne of Shadows. The entire level feels like it belongs in a survival horror game, and its core focuses on death and fear. The temple serves as a massive torture facility that hides the darkest secrets of the royal family. Ancient legends say that the temple walls were built using the bones of the evil dead. Every pillar contains the remains of those who committed crimes against the crown. Also, the traps inside were designed to execute anyone who entered, so their bodies could be added to the crypts. A detail that players rarely notice is the presence of real crimson blood. It's right on the floors and on the walls. Look at the wooden framing on the wall and the distinct red pool directly underneath on the stone masonry. It is incredibly rare to see actual blood in a Nintendo game because these worlds are usually bright and clean. This pool shows a dark, violent history that was carefully hidden from the public eye. The blood has been there for centuries. Inside the halls, you find literal guillotines that hang from the shadows. There are a bunch of torture devices in this dungeon, which is also splattered with the blood of real victims of torture and execution. It is believed that this temple was built by the Sheikah. Why would they build these horrifying torture chambers? Like I said, to protect the crown. The Sheikah were the elite agents entrusted with the lives of the royal family. It was their specific job to drag enemies of the kingdom to this temple. In the deepest rooms of the dungeon, these prisoners were interrogated, tortured, or dealt with in even worse ways. This place, it's an absolute taboo for the royal family. They never mention the temple or its horrific purpose in their historical stories. Obviously, they want the world to forget the things that happened in the dark so that the kingdom can maintain a peaceful front. But deep within the confines of the Shadow Temple, the scariest mini-boss of the entire franchise hides beneath a pile of deadly corpses. In the deepest parts of the Shadow Temple, you enter a room that looks entirely empty. Piles of bones and old corpses litter the floor. Pale hands stretch upwards from the soil. But just as you walk past them, one of these hands snaps upward and grabs you by the neck, holding you completely in place. This is already horrifying, but something scary is about to rise from the pile of corpses. While you are trapped in that grip, the actual monster rises from the ground. This is Dead Hand. It looks like a pale, bloated zombie with an unnaturally long body. Dark purple bruises and deep red stains cover its flesh, and an oversized jaw hangs open on its face. The creature slowly shuffles toward your restrained character. It leans its horrifying head down to bite you, while the hands in the dirt keep you pinned. To survive, you have to break free from the grip and strike the monster's head when it lowers to attack. Inside the Shadow Temple, you can use the lens of truth to spot Dead Hand's main body moving beneath the pile of corpses before it even emerges. But this is not your first encounter with the creature. You actually face it first as a child, hidden in the dark waters inside the bottom of the well beneath Kakariko village. The location suggests a dark theory that Dead Hand, follow me here, is a devourer of children. It waits in the absolute darkness beneath the village streets, right where young children might fall down the well and get lost. The complete lack of official history regarding the monster makes this grim theory highly plausible. Dead Hand remains one of the most memorable horrors for players due to the sheer panic of the mechanics. The game forces you into complete helplessness as you struggle against the restraints. The pale monster slowly closes the distance. To add to the terror, a chilling laugh echoes through the room, growing steadily louder as the creature gets closer to taking a bite. Once you manage to defeat this nightmare, the final boss of the dungeon waits for Link at the very end. Bongo Bongo. The final horrifying challenge in the depths of the Shadow Temple is met when you drop into his arena with a sudden shock. You fell into a deep, dark pit, and you land directly on the surface of a giant drum. That's where the drum begins to vibrate as a heavy, steady rhythm echoing from the shadows. The boss itself, Bongo Bongo, looks like a mutilated corpse that has been completely pulled apart. Its hands are detached from its body and float in the air on their own. The wrists look like they were roughly amputated long ago. Its body hangs upside down, and its face appears to be split open with a large single red eye staring out from the center. Bongo Bongo is a prime example of scary body horror in the Zelda franchise. This monster has the chilling ability to turn completely invisible. In its invisibility, it moves through the air in total silence, while its severed hands slam down on the drum surface. To even see the creature, Link must use the lens of truth. Without this specific item, the horror remains entirely invisible. More horrifying than this appearance is the lore of this boss. The history of this beast is tied directly to the darkness of the village. It was sealed deep inside the bottom of the well for a very long time. When Ganondorf took over the kingdom, the seal broke, and Bongo Bongo escaped. It immediately set Kakariko village on fire, attacked Sheik and Link, and then retreated into the temple depths. A popular community theory explains exactly where this monster came from. An old man in the village tells a story about a man who lived long ago, right where the well stands now. This man possesses an eye that could see the truth, and he owned a special artifact. We can connect this historical figure directly to the boss through several distinct clues. Bongo Bongo can only be detected by using the lens of truth. The monster was originally sealed deep inside the village well. The creature resides in a dungeon defined by torture and agony. This man was likely Bongo Bongo. He was probably caught for a crime and punished by the kingdom, having both of his hands cut off at the wrist. His spirit remained trapped within the torture chambers, eventually warping into the phantom shadow beast. The hands he uses to play his drums are the very limbs cut off during his execution. He now roams the dark as a phantom beast. While we are not completely sure of his definitive origin, his existence is one of the creepiest things in the Zelda franchise. We can talk about scary bosses, areas, and enemies in the game, but the most horrifying thing about the game is the theme of the game itself. Many people believe that Ocarina of Time is a story about the loss of childhood innocence. At the start of the journey, Link lives in the Kokiri Forest. This place functions like a childhood dream where nobody ever grows up and nobody ever leaves. It is a safe world closed off from change. Even though Link feels different because he has no fairy, his life remains small and sheltered. But this safety breaks the moment he leaves the woods. Growing up begins when innocence is finally shattered. Once Link enters the wider world, he immediately encounters death, poverty, and betrayal. The biggest sign of this broken innocence is the sudden time skip. When Link pulls the Master Sword, he expects to become a hero right away. Instead, he loses 7 years of his life in an instant. He does not get to grow up naturally. Link becomes an adult, and his childhood is completely stolen. This makes older Link feel inherently eerie. He has the body of a man, but his mind is still that of the same young boy who left the forest. The world expects him to fix every problem, even though he never got a normal path into maturity. The adult world is essentially just a child world, completely ruined. The temples themselves reveal a history of deep corruption and decay. These places show Link that the bright world of his childhood was never actually as secure as it seemed to be. The people he knew changed just as drastically. His old friends, they became sages. They left their normal lives behind to become distant spirits. He can never go back to the way things used to be with them. Even his connection with Princess Zelda becomes heavily tragic because the childhood wonder is entirely replaced by the brutal burdens of a broken kingdom. The ending of the game provides the strongest evidence for this theory. Link does save the world, but he does not get a normal happy resolution. Zelda sent him back to be a child again, but it is a deeply bittersweet gift. He returns to his youth with knowledge that no child should ever possess. At this point, he's experienced war, crushing responsibilities that nobody else in his timeline remembers, and he gets his lost time back. But even though he's a kid again, he can never regain that innocence. He has witnessed the end of the world, and he can never be a normal boy ever again. That is why the ending feels so sad and grim. The final sign of this loss happens when his fairy companion, Navi, flies away into the window light. She was the magic that started his entire journey. Her departure serves as the final symbol of his childhood, leaving him behind forever. Take a break from the tragedy and watch our video on why Breath of the Wild is the perfect open world. Click the video on your screen, and I'll see you there.